Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Entrepreneurship Now, where we talk about the real stories of entrepreneurs and what it takes to be successful if you want to start your business now. Today, I'm so incredibly excited because I have a young lady who is so multi-talented. She does so much, but in addition to doing so many things in her professional life, she has incorporated a 501c3 along that journey. And we are going to talk about how to operate a 501c3 or a nonprofit as a business. I have here Miss Syreeta Ziegler. Hi, love.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining me. I am very intrigued by your story, and I know my audience will be as well. I would love for you to just give them a little bit of a background in how you came up with Guide My Heart.
Absolutely. As I like to share, it's kind of twofold. So, years ago, I had a broken relationship, and um, during that time, it was a different kind of recovery after the breakup. I realized, like, wow, when people say you're dealing with a broken heart, it's not just a surface level thing. And so I came up with the acronym for it, and I was like, wow, this is, affecting my health, my mental health, my physical health. It's affecting my energy. I'm just not, wanting to do anything. It's affecting my ambition, the things I cared about before. This broken state has taken that away from me. It's affecting my relationships. My even how, I've always been an avid believer, a very strong Christian woman of faith. But even there's times when you just feel, doubtful to God, like, why am I going through this, or why am I hurting? And then my relationship with myself, how I saw myself, my self perception. And then the T, I realized, like, look at the time that I've used. I've used all this time into a person that I'm not moving forward with. So it felt like, not a good use of my time. And now I'm in a place of healing. I'm not able to kind of move forward, and I'm not utilizing my talents, my God-given talents. So that was where I came up with this acronym HEART, and standing for all those things. And so Guide My Heart is kind of a play off of Guard Your Heart, excuse me, Proverbs 4:23, where it says, all things flow from the heart. And so my thing was, it's so important to guard your heart because all things do flow from it. And I realized it, as I just stated. So I was, so frustrated, and I was a little bit angry. I was like, I'm so tired of, putting so much of my heart and so much into someone, and, being disappointed. I'm like, there's nothing I can do. Once the past is gone, it's gone. I'm like, but I can help other young ladies. Because I feel like accountability is where we really take our power back, because we have to realize, while we can't change other people's behavior, we can, do anything we can to protect ourselves from, being encountering with those types of people. So I thought, if I can empower other young girls at an early age, or, they can avoid a lot of mistakes that women that we go through. And then I thought about the women who, maybe, have went through some things, or in a later season in life, but who need that, guidance, or that comeback. So that's where it kind of stemmed from, based on Proverbs 4:23, guard your heart because all things flow from it. And I came up with Guide My Heart, again, as a bridge from that. And I wanted to help young women really mentor and foster, just really building your self-esteem and your self-worth, and understanding your relationship with God, and why that's so imperative when you're in relationships, so you can avoid toxic relationships. Because it's not just bad dating, it's not just being in a bad relationship, it can affect the trajectory of the rest of your life, and how you see yourself. And so that was the whole premise of uh, Guide My Heart. And also too, when I was in college, I was a young mom, a single mom, and I, even then, I said, oh, when I become rich and famous or whatever, I'm gonna start a nonprofit. I'm gonna help young women and young girls. I didn't know what that was gonna look like. But fast forward, about 7 years ago or so, when I went through that season in my life, and I was writing and doing a lot of things, that's where it actually blossomed, and it all came full circle. And then also my journey as a woman, I felt like I, really had matured, and was seasoned And so that's where Guide My Heart came from, a nonprofit. And, you know, when I first started, it was really just getting information. I did a lot of writing and on social media and just sharing informative tips and quotes and things like that to really empower young girls and women to make better decisions. But with that being said, it did become a 501c3, and we added workshops and programming, and I've worked with local high schools. I've had a scholarship program, internship programs, and now we are excited to incorporate counseling programs as well.
Well, I want to start by saying that I think it is incredible that you have turned your trauma into inspiration for other women and young ladies out there, because I do agree with you wholeheartedly that accountability, but even more so the proper roadmap and really receiving some level of instruction or mentorship from someone who has, lived life, learn a couple of lessons, but they're willing to give you that roadmap so that you don't have to bump your head quite as much, right? And I think that's so incredible that you're doing that. But you mentioned, we started the podcast talking about the 501c3. So there may be some of our viewers out there who aren't quite familiar of what a 501c3 is. Would you mind explaining that to them a little bit?
Absolutely. A 501c3 is just basically, in layman's term, it is how you're ranked as far as tax purposes. You federally ranked, and it gives you the opportunity to get donations and to receive certain portions that you would not as just a regular business. But with that also comes public responsibility. And you're also, there's parameters, I would just say, on what you can and can't do as a 501c3, and there's different kind of rankings as nonprofits. But basically it is, your classification federally. And so with that being said, a lot of people don't understand, you start the process within your state. And I'm out of state of Georgia. And so whatever that process is for you to start your LLC or however you rank your business, but to actually become a 501c3, there's another leg of process. So your whatever you pay and all that good stuff within your state. And I would just recommend any of our viewers who are in that, trying to figure out where to get started and all that good stuff, Google is your best friend. I've helped so many people and friends, and I know, but honestly, I'm just a go-getter. And we are so blessed to have Google at access. It has anything and everything that you need. So I would recommend that first start with that process of looking up for your state and what the qualifications are, what you have to do. So to get your business established, because that's first. And then once you do that, then you go through the process, and there is a there's qualifiers. I don't want to get into the details with that, but you have to know what the mission of it is and if it truly will qualify as a 501c3. Everyone won't qualify as that. And then there are specific types of 501c3s too. So, I'm not a tax professional, but there is a process with that. And I will say that fortunately for the people who are trying to do it now, it is I feel like it's a little more seamless than it was years and years and years ago. It used to take a lot longer. I think it's expedited a little quicker. And obviously, because of, our digital accessibility, we're able to get things processed a little quicker. But with that being said, they will qualify you based on questions that they ask. They'll give you a code that you're going to be, that's how you'll be referred to. And again, this is all public information. This is all under, our federal government. So it is a process. It is a cost as well. And I don't believe it's as expensive as it was years ago. There are a lot of programs, some nonprofit, some for-profit, that are accessible as well, that can help you through the process from beginning to end, or if there's a specific portion. I know there's LegalZoom out there if you want to get your EIN number established, because that's the first level, again, establishing a business. And then, I think they will also help you in the process if you need to get a 501c3. So that's what I would advise. Because I'm sure a lot of things have probably even changed within the last 6 years from when I started the process. So I would just advise, all of our viewers to, if they're interested in it, to first and foremost, to just really understand what is your purpose, your mission of your business / nonprofit, what are the goals out of it. And then when you get all that, all that good stuff, then you actually, get your license and then pursue your 501c3, because that's going to be imperative. Because again, they're going to look at your structure and see if it's going to be relevant to be able to classify as that. And then once you do that part, there's the obligations that you have to have. You have to do your taxes and do it properly, and all that good stuff. And again, the websites, all that is available to share with that. But I would just advise all of any new business owners, whether, entrepreneurs, whether, it's a nonprofit or not, stay on top of your filing, stay on top of all that. I had to learn that, from trial and error, because when you do have a lot of things going on, you may not realize that that's just as imperative as all the other good stuff. You're trying to do the marketing, you're trying to do all that, but you got to do those books and send them in. Even if you're not pulling in tons of revenue, you still have to get it done. So that is what I would share on the process of becoming a 501c3.
That's incredibly helpful. And you were so detailed. And I really do appreciate that, because very often I get requests from people who want to start something. They're not quite sure what it is that they want to start, but they know that there is some need in the community that they see and they want to best serve it. And they automatically think, well, I need to start a nonprofit, right? And they think that I need to start a nonprofit, thinking that it will help them to avoid having to set up a business structure, but that's not true. It's actually the complete opposite. You do have to operate your nonprofit just the same way as you would your business. And if anything, you may need a few more documents in order to make sure you are dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's. So thank you so much for going through that thoroughly. And you mentioned something, and when you were speaking about the business structure, right? And the structure that you set up for your nonprofit. And I know that it started back in 2018. So tell me a little bit more about how that structure has changed from its inception till today.
Well, of course, there are parameters, as I mentioned before. Anytime you have a 501c3 that you have to follow through, you have to have your board, you have to have your bylaws and all that good stuff, and it is available to them. And so I had to do all that, to even be considered as a 501c3, and I did all that from the beginning. But I think, structurally, I still have all those things set up. I just think my strategy and my, my goals of how I'm going to achieve the mission have changed over the years, and I continue to refine. And again, it's more so just trying to really have a focus, and because I don't want to get lost in the sauce. I want to remember, who I'm really trying to help. And I would give that advice to all of my entrepreneurs out there. Just really, really sit down and really look at, what am I really trying to do? And sometimes if you are a very ambitious person, and you do want to do a lot of things for your community. But I would just really advise all of our, viewers right now to just think about, well, what is it that I really want to accomplish out of all of this? What would be the goal? What would be the mission, and something I can focus on, and something I can bring to the table that might be needed and that's not there. So you can really have a focus, and that's going to help you because it's going to be a lot of work. But when you have a focus, it really allows you to tailor a lot of things, and because when you have a lot going on, you've heard the saying, jack of all trades, master of none. And
Yes.
I like to say, I'm jack of all trades, master of some. So, so I got a few on my mastered. And I would also just say that for all the entrepreneurs, whether it's a business or a 501c3 or just any nonprofit, any organization, just always look at everything that you're doing. Whether you have another job, whether you have another business, whether you have other talents, and see how you can make them align. I'm all about alignment. I think a lot of people, and especially I'm in Atlanta, so if you're in kind of any kind of metro city or major city, you'll meet a lot of people doing a lot of things. Most people, do have one business and also sell real estate. And I think there's a blessing in that, especially in these times. I think multiple streams is smart and necessary for many people. I think what's important though, working smarter, not harder. It's a fine alignment. Places where it can overlap for a couple reasons. It'll allow you to be able to utilize your resources to stretch them the best way possible because there's alignment. And so when there's overlap and alignment, you'll find yourself being able to connect the dots better. And then also with your messaging or your umbrella of who you are for your brand, it's easy for you to promote that because it makes sense. I've seen people where they I don't want to say go wrong, but if they have two totally different opposing things and they're trying to, this business and that, and they're so different, and it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard for you to put that 100%. But as I had mentioned to you in our conversation, I do marketing full time. I have my bachelor's degree in communications with concentrations in marketing, PR, and journalism. And my master's degree is in psychology counseling. And the good thing about that is, obviously marketing is a plus with everything I do in my personal branding and in my nonprofit. So it helps me where I don't have to do expenditures or, someone to do my flyers or my website or come up with my, color schemes and all that good stuff. And then, my master's degree is in psychology. So it has helped me with my, with my nonprofit and working with young girls and women and helping them and also, have a podcast. Everything kind of overlaps into that. So that's one suggestion that I would give is that, try to find things that are in alignment. It's okay to do more than one thing. It's probably smart, but make sure they all align because you'll find it kind of going together. And also networking too, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs like to network. And I think where a lot of entrepreneurs go wrong is, you'll find somebody online that's doing the exact same thing that you're doing. Oh, let's network. Well, it's not about support, but it's like they're trying to get their stuff out. It's actually kind of going to clash a little bit. Find somebody who complements what you do. And then that's where you get that synergy and you can collaborate and come together with another business or another nonprofit. Or, in that area, you can come together to do programming, but just make sure that you're not looking for somebody else they're trying to do what you're trying to do. So you got to remember that. So to think that they're going to be the solution is, not necessarily, look for people who are going to complement your mission and be able to, you do something for them and they're able to do something for you that would not be able to happen.
I agree. I agree that partnerships are incredibly powerful. And one of the best ways to find people to potentially partner up with are through networking events. But networking events are multifaceted in their benefits because I host several networking events each and every month. And I help a lot of my clients to set up networking events. Why? Because they are incredible lead generators. And whether it is for a nonprofit or it's a for-profit business, lead generation is absolute key. That is the top of your sales funnel. The number of leads that you have coming in at the top of that funnel will definitely impact how many deals you're able to close when it comes to at the bottom of that funnel, how many you're able to actually convert. And I know we're throwing some of these terms around: nonprofit, for-profit, 501c3. One thing that I want to make sure is very clear for the audience that nonprofit does not mean that the business does not make money.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say that again for those of you in the back. Nonprofit does not mean that that business does not make an income, right? Nonprofit, as we mentioned earlier, usually refers to the 501c3 status and the tax benefits that you are able to get because your organization performs some type of public service. And there are several categories that they consider to be a nonprofit. So why do I say that? I say that because it's important to make sure you have a plan in place of how your organization is actually going to be able to generate income. Yes, I said your nonprofit needs to actually be generating income. And there are a lot of different ways that you can go about that. So I would love for you to just tell our audience a little bit more about a few of the techniques that you have used to generate income for your nonprofit.
Absolutely. Everything in between, all of the above. But I will say, I agree with you totally. As you mentioned, I have worked for several full-time, several nonprofits. And some of the biggest organizations we're familiar with are nonprofit organizations. And generate a huge revenue. But again,
Right.
it's the purpose of the revenue and how it's supposed to be distributed out is what distinguishes it. But with that being said, you do have to, it's a business in the sense of the purpose of the business is different, but how you have to look at it and whatever your goals are, you have to have revenue usually to do that. And so there's several ways in a nonprofit. One obvious way is to, solicit for donations. And that's why the 501c3 status is so important if you are going to be a nonprofit, because it allows you to get donations, especially from like corporate donors. They usually don't do it unless you are 501c3 because it's a tax write-off. So that's why that's so imperative if you do plan on doing a nonprofit. Also, I would advise, and for another organization that I've been a member of, how they were able to generate, and what I kind of have done is, you can also have another business that can generate income business and that pour into that nonprofit. So, you don't have to worry about, the same, regulations, but you can generate the income and that can pour in. I'll give you an example. Or as a nonprofit, you can, we do t-shirts, we do paraphernalia, we do a planner every year that we sell, that goes towards the nonprofit. I have a I influencer award event, but during that we generate, or solicit for donors. And then, depending on what your structure is, there are a lot of different ways that you can again have self-sustaining income that comes again from that nonprofit. You can have memberships. Um, and then, that's why it's so important to understand your mission and your purpose and your demographic. So as you were saying, like with your leads and all the good stuff, and also a good part of being a nonprofit or any business, to be honest, there's so many available, is the ability to get grants. And so I would recommend, though, if you don't know anything about grant writing, to solicit, and you may have to pay out of pocket for a grant writer, but it'll be worth it. And so that's why it's so important for your bookkeeping to be on point, and all of your ducks to be enrolled, because then you can solicit for grants. And I know a lot of main nonprofits are they self-sustain. Their revenue is based on, extended grants or grant renewals. So there's several different aspects. And depending on what the actual, you can have a restaurant, if you wanted to, that is a nonprofit restaurant that, that if that's how it generates income. But what's important is just that you know what you're going to need. If you're going to actually need people to actually work, because your board is one thing, but people actually working for your nonprofit like a business, you have to have a way to sustain that. So if you're going to need that, if you're going to need a building, I had a building prior to COVID-19, and it was just more so to have a space, to gather and to meet and all the good stuff. But that costs money. So you just have to look at your overhead with anything else, and now establish, and then what your goal and mission is, how many people or things or whatever you're trying to reach, and then figure out a way, find out the best way. And it could be a collaboration of all of it. Like with me, we've taken donations, we did solicitations, we sell items. I did my own personal, quite a bit of my own personal funds savings towards this. But I will just say this too, not to scare anyone, that is a real part of starting a business, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's a regular, business. You're going to have to probably utilize a lot of your own funds to begin, because that's just part of it. And no matter whose that you use, you're usually going to start off. You're not going to start off in the green. There's going to be a red period before you start, actually getting that ROI or whatever that you're putting in. It takes time. And so that's the real reality of it. I know they paint it that you're just, the money has to come from somewhere. And that's why I say, no matter what you do, regardless, nonprofit, for profit, make sure it's something you really want to do and you really believe in and you're behind in it.
Yeah, and I agree with you wholeheartedly that you do need to have a firm idea, not just in your head, but pencil to paper of exactly what your operation expenses are going to be in order for your nonprofit to accomplish its goal. And that's the exact same as if we were talking about a for-profit, right? In the example that you gave about a restaurant, if you're starting a restaurant, you need to know how much is the space going to be, about how much is food going to be a month, how much are you going to have to spend on employees, and all of that is going to determine exactly how far you can take that business and what your timeline is going to look like. So going back specifically to nonprofits, yes, you may have to do some investing in the very beginning, but if you don't want that to be a long-term situation, you have to do this planning up front. And I want to make sure that everybody is able to walk away with an actual idea or checklist of some ideas for how they can generate income with their nonprofit. So as our wonderful guest has expressed here, you can sell products. So that may be t-shirts, that may be ebooks, that may be printed out books, that may be guides, that may be planners. The sky's the limit in the things that you can actually sell in order to further your mission. You can additionally, when it comes to generating income, get grants, right? There are hundreds, thousands, possibly even millions of different grants out there of various sizes. It could be $100 grant. It could be $100,000 grant. The sky's the limit when it comes to the different options that are out there, but each has its own specific requirements. So make sure that you are reading over those requirements before you just apply, because you don't want to waste your time applying to something if they don't actually give grants to that type of mission or to that type of industry. And what do I mean by that? Well, it may be a grant that's specifically for nonprofits that are helping out with the abandoned pet issues in the city, right? But if you have a nonprofit that is focused on creating educational opportunities and a coaching program for young ladies, well, that's not really on the mission of what that grant is for, right? So why waste your time just because they have money available? You need to make sure that you're aligning what the mission is for the grant with your missions as an organization. Donations are a really great way in order to generate income for your nonprofit. However, you want to make sure that that is not all you're relying on. I want to say that again for those in the back. You want to make sure that is not all you're relying on for your nonprofit. And when it comes to donors, they want to know what things have you done, right? They want to know, where is my money going? I'm happy to give it to you, and a lot of large organizations or large companies have money put aside just for them to give back so that they can lower their tax status, but they still want to know that their money is going to where they expect it to, right? So I wouldn't necessarily start there or just heavily rely on that. You want to have something else going. There are plenty of services that the nonprofit can offer that it can charge for, and that be a way of generating income as well. And while the nonprofit is making money, please keep in mind that you yourself can also make money as well. When we talk about generating income, there's generating income for the nonprofit, but then making sure that you get paid. Now, here's what you don't want to do. Connect your bank account as the nonprofit bank account, and then all the money that's made, look at what I just made, because that's not how that works.
No,
that's not how that works at all. You do not want to do that. You do not want to do that at all.
Oh, yeah, you don't want to do that.
Don't do that. But what you can do is you can have your own for-profit business that is receiving some type of payment for services offered to the nonprofit. What do I mean by that? What's an example of that? So let's say in the example of our guest, she has a nonprofit that is focused on providing mentorship and guiding to women and young girls who may be going through different things in their life, right? So in doing that, she as an individual may have a speaking or coaching business, right? That she can set up a seminar for that nonprofit, and the nonprofit is going to pay her as a speaker, right? Because that's totally separate. That's a different capacity. That is not in her capacity as the founder and creator of the organization that's paying for her time for giving that speaking engagement. So there are a lot of different ways that you can actually make money for the nonprofit, but also make sure that you get paid for the nonprofit. The main thing is just making sure that you plan. It's
Yeah.
really just that simple. It's really just that simple. And I just want to say, Ms. Ziegler, thank you so much for joining us today. You have been a wealth of knowledge. You have thoroughly gone through so many aspects of what it takes to start a nonprofit. And I know there are some people out there watching that want to connect with you, my love. So tell them exactly how they can connect with you.
So, in regards to my nonprofit, Guide My Heart, we can be reached on every platform with the simple tag guidemyheart.org. And that's another recommendation. Do that for your business. Have the same tag everywhere. That's a marketing tip. Makes it easier to find. And then my personal brand, Syreeta Ziegler. And again, all of them are the same for all platforms. We're talking about Instagram, Facebook. And then our website is guidemyheart.org, and my website is Syreeta Ziegler.
I love it. Thank you so much, darling, for your time and
Thank you.
giving us all this knowledge. And to those of you who are watching, we are about to sign off. Until next time, bye, my cherished loves.
Thank you.